Hey, Dr. Morey, Uncivilized Vitality. This is a video about cutting basic bushcrafting skills, a few basic notches in a stick. I'm doing the video because last night in the meeting I said I would do a video so we could get this a little more clear. My camera woman had to take off, so I'm going to try this on the tripod. So you're going to need a couple things, just a knife really, and I'm going to use my Leatherman Signal because this is great for making notches. So I'm going to set this down right here, and hopefully you'll be able to see this just basic piece of wood. So there's a couple, I'm going to use my Signal. You could use a knife and use a baton to cut in the straight parts, and I could show you that maybe in a video example, but using the Signal, the Leatherman Signal, is great because you have this saw is in addition to a blade. So let's cut 4 basic notches. You should be able to cut when you're doing some bushcrafting skills are just a round or scoop notch, which is the one most people cut, a square notch, an angle notch, and a hook notch. And then we'll show you about crowning. So 5 basic skills that you'll need to practice. So let's start with a round notch. Okay, so use the blade, and then this is a good way to do it. I'm going to put my blade with my thumb and my other thumb, and then for good control I just push my blade through the wood instead of this, right, like that. So I'm just using my thumbs to kind of shave off some material down into the wood in a scooping manner. Turn the stick in the other direction, scoop in the opposite direction, and just keep rotating and scooping until you get your notch down as deep as you want. That's very shallow, but you get the idea. So just sort of scooping each way, turn the stick around, and then you've got that little round notch. You would use this maybe on a corresponding stick so that the notches match up, or like on my finger, it just sort of sits and would hold itself in place. Lots of reasons to use a round notch. Maybe a small round notch if I'm using lashing for a place for my paracord or bank line or cordage to grip. So lots of uses to the round notch. That's the easiest way to do that, just simply scooping that out. Now, you can also do that with just a regular straight blade, but I'm trying to use the Leatherman today to show how you can do this without batoning. Making a square notch now. This one I'm going to bring my saw function in. So you might not be able to see this on camera. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 cuts about 1 inch apart. Let's see if I can do this on the camera. So, no, gotta get down on the ground. So I'm just going to saw down about that deep. Not too deep, depending how deep I want the notch. Just run my saw down, and then I'll come about 1 inch away, depending if that's how far I want it, how wide I need the notch to be. And I will saw down through there again. Now, so I have these 2 parallel cuts. Hopefully you can see those. The 2 parallel cuts I've used with my saw, and I've got that little block of wood between there. Now I would use my blade. If I have a fixed blade, I can use this blade to pop them out of there pretty aggressively. The Leatherman being a folding knife, I mean, you probably get away with it, is a Leatherman. You put your blade down there and you're just going to twist against that block of material in the middle, and it should, if you heard that crack, it should split and pop right out of there. It's just a lever. Maybe I'll get in the other one, just sort of, do you hear that click? Just pop that piece right out. Now it just takes a little bit of cleanup down in there. All right, a little bit of cleanup along the edges, and now I've got a square notch. If I were to do a corresponding square notch, same width on another stick or piece of wood, and I were to latch them together, think Lincoln logs. They would be locked in pretty tight. So the square notch is one to know for if you're going to be building or constructing some sort of bushcraft apparatus that needs to be locked together more securely. So the round or shallow oval notch, curved notch, square notch. And the next you're going to want to be able to do is an angle notch. These are also pretty simple, easy to do. Again, with my Leatherman saw, I'll do that up here. So we're just gonna make a cut again. We're gonna saw down a little ways, saw partially through about the depth of the notch, and then use the blade to cut on an angle down and take off material a little bit at a time. I just cut toward that cut on an angle, deeper and deeper into the wood, and shave away the material till I get to the bottom of that cut. Clean that up a little bit, and now you see I've cut an angle notch. Some people call these a number 7 notch or an L notch, right? But just call it an angle notch. Now, the use of the angle notch again is to constructing chairs, tables, that sort of thing. But a lot of times you'll find this in the triggers of traps and other things that you're going to use for hunting or gathering food. So an angle notch is another basic notch to know. Square notch, round notch, angle notch. The last notch you should be proficient at is kind of a fancy notch. You don't need it all the time necessarily, called a hook notch, and I'll show you how to do that. So get our saw, and this time we're going to saw 2 lines, but they're going to intersect like an X. So I'll take you out of camera for a second and I'll drop those down in. Okay, so what I've done is I've sawn an X with my 2 lines. Now, as an aside, if you didn't have a saw and a Leatherman, you would use your knife and another mallet or stick to baton the knife straight in to make these straight cuts, or straight in to make that angle cut, or you would baton your knife down into the wood to make this X, right? So you could baton if you didn't have the saw. I find my Leatherman multi-tool, my Signal, excellent for making notches. It doesn't take long at all. Once I've gotten the X cut in there, I'm going to take away all the material that is not this hook, the bottom part of the X, this part right here. Okay? So just come in, and just like I did on the angle cut, I'm just going to remove material toward, perpendicular to that cut in the wood on both sides. Well, actually all 3 sides. I'm just going to remove material headed toward that saw cut and cut those out of there. So it's starting to look like this. And we have this part here that's remained. Now I just will carefully carve down behind that toward the main part of the stick. And I just cut down in behind there, carving out some more material. And sometimes you can even use your saw to get down behind that hook to make the removal of some of that material a little easier. Just carve that out of there until you've got the material removed and you've got a little bit of a, see how my knife sort of drops down behind that hook. Now what would that be good for? This is not a notch you're going to need all the time, and it really serves just a couple functions, just to hang things from. So I could put the bale of my pot on that hook if I had another stick up here, and I could hang that over the fire. The hook notch is good for some traps, some trigger systems for trapping and snares, but mainly the hook notch is just a fancy way to hang something from it. Okay? So work on that hook notch, cut that X, dig out the material, leave that hook, that horn I've heard that called a horn notch too, but only the most people call it a hook notch. Then you have your angle notches. All right, the angle notch, which is one line cut straight perpendicular to the length of the wood into the stick, and then remove the material on an angle. And then you have the standard sort of scooped out round notch, and then two parallel lines perpendicular to the length of the wood in, and then snap that block out, clean it up to get your square notch. The last basic carving skill you should have before we start doing some bushcraft and traps is, maybe I cut a stick and I'm going to use this for a stake, or I'm going to put my tarp over it, and it's got this sort of sharp edge where the stick makes that 90-degree turn, the wood, from running the length of the stick to that cut. So we're going to crown that. And what that is, I'm just going to whittle off, again just using my thumb to press that knife around. I'm just going to whittle that edge off, turn that all the way around, and just sort of chip away at that edge, cutting it off, and just crown off that angle until you sort of made these little facet cuts all the way around. Just sort of rounded that off. Now my tarp, or even my hand in a walking stick, it's not going to contact those sharp edges like this left on the other end of the stick, right, from a saw cut. I've got that nice rounded crown. Clean that up a little bit more for you. You don't want to whittle or cut in the direction of the length of the stick, because that's just like sharpening it to a point. I'm just removing some of that material so you can see. I want to go at an angle to that rim, that edge of that cut, and sort of chop that off in little facets until you've got that nice and rounded off. So that would just be crowning the end of a stick. Good when you're making structures and you don't want those sharp parts. Square notch, round notch, angle notch, and the hook notch. Okay, that's it. Leave some comments if you like that. Thumbs up to the channel or video, share it. I think that's it. All right, goodbye.